What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside Hartford, Connecticut, live. And this is going to be a video that we've been looking forward to doing for a little bit. And when I say we, I think you guys know what I'm referring to. Of course, we have Patrick with us today. How you doing, Patrick?
Doing pretty good.
So just so y'all know, we did have to delay this video a little bit. We both actually have been dealing with bouts of illnesses, so always something. I know you guys are well aware of me dealing with it, especially if you follow the Twitter. And so we're both finally ready to go, and this is going to be our recap of the 2020 Stanley Cup Final. So, of course, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go game by game. We're going to discuss the games, how they went out, and all of that. You'll see how we're going to do it. It's going to be a basic summary of the games, just because it's a Stanley Cup Final. And we're going to kind of rotate here who does game 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll see. And it'll be exciting. So I'm going to let Patrick start off with game 1. Whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
All right, so just before I get to game one, obviously going to this series, there was a big favorite here for the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course. Dallas, none of us really expecting to get this far, but they did, and obviously anybody has a chance in a best-of-7 game series. So going into game one, I was expecting Tampa to come out with a hard, strong win and show the Dallas team that they want control of this series and want the cup. So in this game one, it turns out that was not the way the Tampa Bay Lightning got the result. Dallas came out hard, Dallas fought hard, and they came out with this 4-1 win. The first period goals, obviously, Joel Hanley started the game off, only 5 minutes into the game. And then later in the first period, Yanni Gourde got his 6th, tying the game 1 apiece. So it was a 1-1 game there going into the second period, as the second period deemed to be mainly controlled by Dallas. More goals by Alexiak and Kiviranta made it a 3-1 Dallas lead going into the third. And now if you're Tampa Bay, you're thinking, obviously, we can't let up. We still have a chance. We're a strong offensive team, just like other strong teams in the East. We can come back easily and fast and force an OT, or if we need to, get more goals to finish the game off before OT and really rebound, because this was not something that they were expecting. So going into the third period, it just continued to not go well for them. Whether it was penalties, the offensive zone time was more for Dallas, and Jason Dickinson tallied another goal towards the waning minutes of the game to make it a 4-1 Dallas victory. So this was a game that was definitely controlled by Dallas. Of course, it was a physical. I mean, the first game of a Stanley Cup Final, you're going to see physical play there. So obviously there are numerous penalties for roughing, and then the simple, hooking penalties. Pretty much half and half on the penalties. But I would say the game obviously was overall physical, but mainly controlled by Dallas. So now we'll go to game 2, and I'll turn it back over to Eric for that.
So game 2 comes in, and we're aware that, Dallas has the little bit of momentum going their way, and they had pulled a bit of an upset victory in game 1, and the tone had been set for physicality as well going into game 2. And everybody kind of knew Tampa needs this win. If Tampa loses game 2, they're down 2-0 in the series. And they can't go down 2-0 in a series that they're supposed to win, that they're favored to win. And the underdogs, as we know, took game 1. It happens a lot. Actually, we saw it when Vegas played Washington in the Stanley Cup Finals a couple of years back. Vegas took game 1. But from there on, as we know, Washington ends up winning the series in 5. So will Tampa Bay have the ability to do that? So game 2 is very interesting. Like I said, the physicality really did step up in game 2, and it would really show specifically in the second period. But right off the bat, Tampa Bay just, the first 10 minutes were pretty uneventful and quiet. But Tampa Bay ends up potting 3 goals within 4 minutes of each other. So they take a 3-0 lead, and those goals were from Braden Point and Palat there, both on the power play. And then Kevin Shattenkirk gets his second goal of the playoffs. Kucherov and Hedman were both involved on 2 of those goals, both of the power play goals. And it got pretty interesting. The second period comes into play, and at this point, Dallas knows they need to get their act together. They need to start shooting more, and they start shooting the puck a good amount of the time. And they actually wind up getting 18 shots in the second, compared to 5 for Tampa. And Dallas managed to sneak one past in the second, and that would be Pavelski getting himself a power play goal, assisted by Klingberg and Radulov. And the second period was really notorious for its physicality. So we had, what is this, 9 penalties in the second period, and a good 4 of them are roughing. And of course, you get a nice goaltender interference. Those are always fun, all at the same time. And unfortunately, I didn't get to watch this game, but I got to see the highlights of it after the fact. And it was a pretty close one. The second period was pretty interesting, and the physicality pretty much peaked at that point. And then we get to the third period. At this point, Tampa's up still 3-1, and Tampa ends up taking control of the third period again, controlling the shots. But the only goal to be scored would be scored by Dallas when Matthias Janmark ends up scoring 5 minutes in, and from there on out, Valevsky showed up, and everybody else in Tampa showed up. They were able to get their stuff together. They kept the offense going. They stayed in the offensive zone. Tampa would hold on to win Game 2, 3-2, setting up the series. Tied at 1 pop going into Game 3, where I'll hand it over to Patrick. You there, bud?
Sorry about that. My mic was slightly muted, but so coming off of this game 2, Dallas obviously wanted to have a different mindset because game 2 was the opposite of the way they played in game 1. Like, it was physical, yes. It was really rough, yes. Plenty of penalties, but they wanted to turn it around. So going into game 3, Dallas wanted to get started scoring early, and that was not the case. I mean, we're talking about a little over halfway into the first period. Tampa Bay's already got a 2-0 lead with goals from Stamkos and Kucherov. So they did have Jason Dickinson that managed to tie it with a few minutes left in the first period. So they made it a 2-1 going into the second period. And obviously the mindset here is, keep pushing ourselves. We're down only 1 goal, still 40 minutes to play. What do we have to lose? I mean, the big problem in the first period was their penalties. They got 2 of the 3 penalties recorded in the first period that were kind of careless. They could have easily been avoided, especially the interference foul that was called on Kiviranta. That was completely unnecessary. And some of these power plays turned into goals for them in the first period. So going to the second period, Tampa wanted to be strong. Did they come out strong? Yeah, probably within the first, 20 seconds. I mean, we're talking less than a minute into the second period. Victor Hedman scores a power play goal and makes it a 3-1 game. And they end up scoring 2 more goals in the second period to make it a 5-1 game going into the third period. And honestly, this is a huge upset for Dallas's playing, and they wanted to either at least even things up or go out fighting, and they kind of chose to kind of go out fighting. Because in the third period, man, we had heck penalties here, man. We got misconducts, we got roughings, slashings, trippings, probably embellishments, but they didn't call that, which kind of pissed me off. Kind of on the rooting Dallas side, but I mean, this is probably the most penalties. Maybe in the series for sure. Let me just 1, 2, 3. I'd say 15 penalties in the third period, 14 or 15. pretty even apiece on either side, and it was not a battle that Dallas wanted to give up. They got one goal, Miro Heiskanen, with about uh, 5 or 6 minutes into the third, and that was it, lights out, and they had nothing from there on forth. And Tampa took Game Three's victory 5-2 and took the series lead 2-1. And now going to Game Four with Eric.
So at this point, momentum is definitely favoring Tampa Bay. They've won back-to-back physical games, and that's the style of hockey Tampa Bay wants. They want you to play them physically, and not only do they want you to play them physically, they want you to come into playing them physically with the mindset of, oh, it's okay. We can beat them by outshooting them. You can't really outshoot Tampa, and at this point, the series was definitely favoring Tampa Bay. So we go into Game 4, and right off the bat, about 7 minutes in, we see Klingberg score a goal for Dallas. And believe it or not, it was their first shot of the game, 7 minutes in. Now, Tampa was really out shooting them. They just weren't getting the great shots, and Khudobin was looking very good. So that was a bit of a heartbreaker for Tampa. And then Dallas ends up scoring yet again with a Pavelski goal with just about a minute and a half left in the period. So it was pretty alarming as, someone who's rooting for Tampa Bay to see them down 2-0. And they finally start getting some offense going towards the end of the period. Braden Point scores a goal to take cut the lead in half, making it 2-1 as we go into the second period. And it wasn't too physical. So at this point, the game's not too physical anymore. The series physicality really drops down after games 2 and 3, specifically game 3. And it gets really, like I said, interesting. So it's early on in the second period. We get a penalty call on Dallas, and Braden Point goes and he scores his second goal of the game, first power play goal, to tie the game up at 2 apiece. Shortly after that, Corey Perry goes and scores a goal for Dallas, putting them back in the lead 3-2. But Yanni Gourde ends up scoring a power play goal with just over a minute left in the second period. So now it's knotted up at 3 apiece again, going into the third. And for the first time in the game, shortly thereafter, about 6 minutes in to the third period, Alex Killorn ends up scoring his 5th goal of the playoffs on a nice shot, pretty lucky, if you want to say, pretty skillful, to give Tampa Bay its first lead of the game, 4-3. But Dallas ends up scoring about 5 minutes after with Joe Pavelski, who really looked very good at this point in time in this series. Pavelski's been all over the place. And they tie the game up, and the game ends up going into overtime. So we get our first bout of bonus hockey in the Stanley Cup Finals. And it was pretty fun, pretty exciting to watch. And then we end up in overtime. We see some no-call penalties, which is fine. It's overtime hockey. Unless it's a blatant penalty, it shouldn't be called. But then we get a pretty controversial moment where Ben ends up pushing down Tyler Johnson, and he gets called for tripping. And, of course, Jamie Benn's not happy about that, and understandably so. So we'll get that. Tampa Bay has a power play here, about 5 minutes into overtime, and they just dominate the zone as you do when you're in power play, especially in overtime. Of course, it is a 5-on-5 overtime session. I should have specified that before because it is the playoffs. But about a little more than halfway through the power play, Tampa is ready, and they're hungry. They want this. And Shattenkirk gets a beautiful shot, and he scores. So, of course, that sends the game done. It's done. Tampa Bay is up 3-1 in this series. So now we go into Game 5, and Tampa Bay has the ability to clinch the cup Game 5 if they can win. Did they win Game 5? Well, that's up to Patrick to tell you.
My side being rooting for the Stars, I was hoping, Dallas had a chance here. I mean, at this point now, coming against Game 5, they're down 3-1. So it's either an all or nothing here, and the cup is on the line. They need to win 2 games to force a Game 7. Well, let's find out if they forced a Game 6 in Game 5. So, coming into this game, obviously, you got to put everything on the line. Take as little penalties as you can. Take the shots when you have the opportunities, and simply keep back on the physicality. And this was one of the lesser physical games, obviously, because Dallas knew that anything physical they take, if it was against them on a penalty kill, Tampa Bay's power play percentage was quite good, and they've scored on power plays in past games in this series. So coming into the first period, Corey Perry put the team up 1-0 for Dallas towards the end of the first period. So that was good. And then unfortunately, Palat would tie in the second period from the Kucherov and point, making it a 1-1 game after 2 periods. So now Dallas needs to put the pressure on. Yeah, they might end up forcing overtime, but they don't want to do that because in the past game, like Eric just talked about, the overtime winner was Tampa Bay. So they want to get more points and try to finish this off in regulation and force that game 6. So Tampa Bay actually ends up scoring first from by Sergachev, puts them up 2-1. And 13:15 remaining in the third period, Joe Pavelski from Tyler Seguin and Miro Heiskanen makes it a 2-2 game, and there's still plenty of time left. And neither team was able to capitalize. Therefore, we went into the first OT. Unfortunately, there was no luck in the first OT, and now you're starting to get, if you're a Tampa Bay fan, you're thinking of that first game of the Columbus-Tampa series that went to like 5 OTs, and you're like, this better not happen. We just need the win so we can get the cup. So hold on one second. Just make sure my So coming the first OT, obviously, there was no luck there with either team scoring. Hold on just 1 second. I'm just fixing something in my hold on 1 second. It's technical difficulties. All right, so coming into the first OT, obviously there was no hold on one second. Okay, yes, coming to OT there was no score obviously, so it went to the second OT, and Dallas Stars next goal you want, because obviously if you don't get it, the Stanley Cup is at a loss, and the Dallas ended up getting the winner in the second OT and ended up forcing that game 6, which is another one obviously they needed to win. In this game 5, obviously very few penalties, only one in regulation, only one on Tampa and two on Tampa and one on Dallas. So now the series is at 3-2, going into game 6, and Eric will tell you if they were able to force a game 7.
Oh, yeah. So Game 6, pretty exciting. Everybody knows Tampa Bay needs to win Game 6 here, because if you lose Game 6, you put yourself in a situation where you're entering Game 7 on a 2-game skid, and nobody wants to do that, because then all the memes will come out about you blowing a 3-1 lead. Look at the Golden State Warriors. So, everybody knows it. And at this point in time, at least from what I've seen in the playoffs, Volevsky hasn't looked that great. He hasn't really made any heads-up saves or anything like that. He's made standard saves, but Khudobin has, to an extent, outshined him, at least in a, per-shot basis, of course. Team success matters more to an extent, but Valevsky just didn't look that great. And the problem with games, 4 and 5, where they were on back-to-back nights. So it was essentially, to an extent, like they had played 3 games of hockey, to an extent, like they had played 3 games of hockey in 2 days, because remember, Game 4 goes into overtime, Game 5 goes into overtime. So then they get a day off before Game 6. And Game 6 was interesting. So pretty early on, we have a Dallas penalty. Nothing comes of it. And then, again, about halfway through the period, we have another Dallas penalty. And this time, Tampa Bay is able to capitalize. Braden Point gets yet another power play goal in this series, assisted by Kucherov and Victor Hedman. So Tampa Bay is up 1-0, and then the first period's pretty uneventful until Victor Hedman gets an interference call. And then we go into the second. Nothing crazy happens early in the second until, again, another interference call on Tampa Bay. But shortly before that interference call, Tampa Bay had actually scored yet another goal. Blake Coleman pots his 5th of the playoffs, and that puts Tampa up 2-0. So let me just start this out by saying the reffing in this series was very suspect at times. They were calling some bad calls. They were not calling some should have been calls. And Game 6 was no exception. But at least they did call some penalties. And about halfway through this power play that Dallas has, Corey Perry ends up drawing goaltender interference. And what ends up happening is that goaltender interference was interesting because, well, yes, it was a penalty. Valevsky had made an amazing lucky stop, with his skate on a shot from Dallas. Of course, had the puck gone in anyway, it would have been a no-goal because of the penalty, but it was just a pretty good shot save by Valevsky, and that gave him a lot of confidence, I think. A skate save is pretty impressive. So, second period's pretty uneventful after those 2 penalties, and then we entered the third, and really, at this point, it becomes clear. Tampa Bay, at this point, had been setting the pace for this game. Dallas, heading into the third period, had only 8 shots on goal. So, Tampa Bay had outshot them 21-8. And you can't expect to win games when you only have 8 shots on goal, especially a Stanley Cup game. So, come the third period, it gets more. Dallas they know that they need to score. So they start throwing more on offense, taking more chances on defense. And Tampa Bay said, okay, you know what? We're not going to try to capitalize on their suspect defense right now. We're going to do what we got to do. We're going to focus on playing defense. And we end up having a pretty quiet, albeit slightly physical, third period, at least the beginning of it. And there were a couple no calls that could have been called. There were a couple penalties that should have been called that weren't. There was that one should have been, or that wasn't in icing, that was called an icing, and should not have been called an icing because it ended up hitting the goalpost. But at least I think that was Game 6, and it's just pretty interesting. And at this point, Dallas's offense is starting to get the shots going, but their biggest moment comes 15 minutes, 27 seconds into the third when Ryan McDonagh draws a tripping penalty. So Dallas just took this power play, and they tried everything they could. Unfortunately for them, they were not able to connect. McDonagh comes back out, and Tampa Bay is able to hold on, and Valevsky gets his first career postseason shutout, and it happens Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. As Tampa Bay wins the game 2-0, Tampa Bay wins the series 4-2 over Dallas, which means, of course, your Tampa Bay Lightning are the 2020 NHL Stanley Cup champions, with an asterisk by it because of the whole pause and all that good stuff. I do have to point that out. But it was a very good series, very exciting series. I was very happy to be able to watch it, most of it at least. And it was pretty cool to see Stamkos go in the Game 3, score that one goal. But, it was pretty exciting. And, yes, I rooted for Tampa, in part because everyone hates Tampa, because they were the heavy favorites. And I'm a Philly fan, so I'm used to getting hate. So, got to stand up for my fellow teams getting hate. But any final thoughts on the series for you, Patrick?
Just a touch. I mean, obviously, it's not what I wanted, but it was what was logically the right winner in this. I mean, Tampa, you could say definitely was working for it harder than Dallas in this series. The MVP went to Victor Hedman of the Lightning, obviously,
Yep.
and Braden Point was credited with the series-winning goal because he got that last goal with the 12:23. But yeah, I mean, overall series, honestly, it went better than I thought because I was more worried about Dallas getting swept or losing the series 4-1. But they fought hard and they should still be proud because not only were they the Western Conference champs, but looking forward, as long as they can, re-sign goalies with like Hudobin and some key players, they can definitely make another run for it. Because none of us saw this one coming. Um, so yeah, the overall series, yeah, was better than I thought. More entertaining for sure. And obviously, I wish I'd gone to Game 7 because that would have been the best thing, a Game 7 Stanley Cup final. But yeah. You got any other last thoughts or?
Here's my question to you. You think if Ben Bishop was healthy, you think the Stars would have won?
I don't think they would have won, but I
Yeah,
think
I
it would have
agree.
gone to a Game 7. There would have
I
been a
don't
better
know.
chance of that. I don't
On
know.
paper,
Bishop's.
yes, but
It would
Kudobin
it
was
would
looking
depend on how
fantastic.
much Bishop was playing throughout the season up until the pause.
That's true.
Because if he just came in after like without playing anything before the COVID, um, they would have been looking worse, I think, because we both saw the game. Even though Dallas won Game 1, there was still so much offensive zone time between games 1, 2, and 3 that was mostly dominated by the Lightning, and the Stars were just standing out there like the Hurricanes or something.
Yeah, no, honestly. It was a good series. It was better than I was expecting. I was expecting a potential sweep again, and then Dallas takes game one, and I'm like, oh, okay, uh, that's not good. Come on, Tampa, and it was a very interesting series again. I liked how there weren't really any massive blowouts. It's not like we had an 8-1 victory or something like that. Every game, I think, was decided by two or fewer goals. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Pretty much. And
Other than game three, and then of course we had two overtime games, game one and game three actually. So it was something. You know, having that double overtime. I like how you mentioned the whole Tampa Bay fans remembering the game one there against Columbus. Oh man, I was terrified. I know both of us were talking during game six, and if that game had gone into overtime, I don't know if either one of us would have really been able to stay up and watch it because we were not feeling good that day, and it would have sucked. But yeah, it was a good series. I enjoyed it. Obviously, sometimes it's fun to root for the underdog. I did it last year. So you underdog lovers, you had 2019. The favorites won 2020. And oh, the irony of Patrick rooting for the underdog this year and rooting for the favorite last year, and both of them lose.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, to sum up this whole year, obviously you can say the bubble idea that they had in Toronto and Edmonton was a huge success.
Oh yes, oh
Virtually
yeah.
no COVID positive tests and no, you know, the only delay of games we had was when they had that whole uh the whole walkout thing and that whole the whole Black Lives Matter thing, but that didn't count towards the COVID, so there really was no
There was no
there
delay
was no
for
stoppage.
NHL
Yeah, so
other than
it
that
was a
day.
perfect success, and if anything ever happened like this years in the future, this would definitely be the way to probably do it again. Um,
100%.
so
100%.
yeah,
Hopefully this never happens again. But if it does, we know we can do it.
yep,
But all right. Of course, thank you for joining me here during the discussion here of the 2020 Stanley Cup, where the Tampa Bay Lightning win. I appreciate you joining me, Patrick.
yeah, no problem.
But other than that, guys, thank you for waiting for us here in this to post this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And again, I don't know if you don't follow us on Twitter, just so you know and are updated, you'll be getting more hockey and football oriented videos. Now baseball is going to take a little bit of a break just because the baseball season's almost over. Of course, we're going to do playoff updates and all that good stuff, but hopefully we get a full football season. But again, stay tuned. Subscribe to us on Twitter at Heartland Sports if you haven't already. Definitely take a look at that. You can also follow us on Instagram at Heartland Sports again. But yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. This is Eric heading out. Have a good one.